If you're in America, take a quarter, put it right here on your wrist and try to play this song. No vibrato, and yes, a little scratchy, just fingers. If you do it well, the quarter will never fall. So all is activating to do the down and up bow is up and down. When you feel comfortable with it, you can go to the next exercise, which is to play the prelude of the first suite, all separate bows, all literally under the silver part of the bow. So again, very scratchy, but now we're adding string crossing to the mix. If you remember, one of our commands was to cross, to use the elbow for cross, but everything starts with the tongue. So now we're going to do this. Again, I warn you, it's a little scratchy, but look at my hand. The quarter is still there, and I'm activating the down and up bow with my fingers and the crossing of the strings with my fingers. Once you feel comfortable, that's not going to be easy. We are trying now to add air to this. Not yet vibrato, decoration. We add air. Look what happens to the same movement here. This is talking. Now I'm adding a bit of chicken wing. That's just plain adding air. The sound all still rings. Now I can be very musical about it and I can add more or decrease or increase the amount of air. I can even suggest beautiful notes with vibrato. Oh. Yeah, so that later. But for the commands, now I have the pumping and I add to it air. So if I go back to the ABCD song or Twinkle Twinkle, it can sound scratchy and clear. Or I'm going to add the chicken wing now, which is the cello lungs. I'm basically filling the lungs with air and pushing the air out. Now I'm going to add decoration, which is vibrato. But everything starts with the pumping. If you can see, I try never to play where 1, 2, 3, 4 are just one block of a robotic hand. No, human hand, meaning they're all flexible like an octopus or like a jellyfish. Now, before we go to the actual jellyfish, which is really an important part, we discussed the articulator of the sound, which are our fingers, the cello tongue. We discussed the creator of the sound, which is the cello lungs. Yeah? And then we have left the connector between the two. But before we go to the connector, to the glue of the two elements that create cello sound, let's talk a little bit about how to hold the bow with the fingers. So even if I'm pumping it in pianissimo or pianissimo, I can still get core to the sound. So if I play something really soft, like a... Yeah, I'm hardly not touching the bow, but I still get sound. I put my bow not on the fingerboard. How do I do that? There's some connection between the fingers and the sticks that allows me. If I just hang on it as if it's a raw strawberry, it will sound like this. The same location of the bow. I'm not putting any kind of, I don't want to say pressure, but gravity into the stick. However, if you guys know the word Play-Doh, if you have little kids and they play with Play-Doh or plastilin, we say maybe in Europe, Play-Doh or plastilin, if you take a ball of Play-Doh and you mark your fingers on it, you don't make holes in it, you don't press it, but you mark it. if you see that mark of the fingers I'm about to talk about, that's the amount of gravity I would put on the stick. So instead of this, just a little bit, now I can create sound. If I just float, a lot of cellists express, that's the sentence I would like you to memorize, don't express your emotions with bad motions. Earlier in the lesson, in the session, I showed you bad motion with your eyebrows, like reaching a high note with your eyebrows. Yeah? There are other bad motions. Elbow. Yeah? Unhuman motion. Unhuman motion with a bow is when cellists want to really express an emotional part, they do this. I'm sorry to say it, they point the bad finger to you, to the audience. I see so much of this. Like, oh my God. Like, if you play the swan, they'll play. Sorry to make fun, I'm not naming names. But that's for me not creating sound. That sound, when I feel the stick, I can play it soft. So what do I do? If you look at your hand, if you drop it like a jellyfish, and you just marvel the creation of God, any hand of a human being, and you look at it, you'll see in China, in Israel, in America, in Canada, in Europe, that the first finger and the thumb will be parallel when you just drop it straight. However, when we play cello, we have to pronate the hand towards the string, towards the stick, so we get the weight into the stick. So when we do the pronation, the thumb and second finger become neighbors. Now, when you think about it, those two fingers are the strongest we have. And if you grab something with those two fingers, it's so strong. We call it, or I call it, the cello ring. You see that ring? Now, when we play the cello, it's so important. This is Galamian school for violin, but it works perfectly on the cello. When you have a ring feeling between the thumb and the second finger on the stick, you will always have that mark on the Play-Doh or the plastilin, or that kind of weight or gravity into the sticks that will allow you to always speak and produce beauty on the cello. So in order to practice it, if you actually look in reality, the thumb touches the stick where it will be under the first joint of the second finger. So if you can now do this ring by placing your thumb under the first joint of the second finger, then drop it down and pronate. Now that feeling, if you just do the pumping in and out like this, or you put a pencil in between your fingers, the thumb and two, and you walk in school or you walk outside, you go to your work, and you create that feeling of connection between the two, your cello playing will get so much better. Now, you put the bow on the string, same as we did before. You get the ring, you put it here. Now, because it's very heavy in the frog, we try to help it with another finger. And you can choose, it could be the 1, the 4, or the 5th. In my case, I add the pinky to the game. So what I have is actually, I call it the cello triangle, or the bow triangle, between the ring and the balance finger, the 5th. So if you want to feel that sensation really well, take the second finger and the thumb and place it at the tip of the bow, and just very gently do like a grandpa clock. You'll see that it's quite easy to do that. However, as you go down, you work yourself down to the frog, it will become harder and harder just with those two fingers, especially with a cello bow, because it's heavier than violin, to do those kind of motions, the circles or the grandpa clock and all of them. Now, that's the main reason when you go down and you try to do, let's say, the grandpa clock, it's very hard because there's so much weight now involved. That's why when you add the pinky to the game, now I have those 3 fingers, I can do whatever. I can scratch my back with my fingers. I can do windshield wipers. I can fight with a bow. I can do whatever I want. I have the control. So those 3 fingers are really crucial for our technique of cello tongue, creating the speaking quality of the cello.